You are squatting in the damp, trampled grass, your legs are cramping from the pre-dawn cold, and your stomach carries an emptiness that has persisted for 2 whole days. On the ground before you lies a fruit that has fallen from a tree. It is overripe, darkened, its skin split open and covered in a strange, bluish, fuzzy coating. It smells of something sharp, sour, pungent, fermenting. Your body, trained by millions of years of evolution, screams, "Do not touch it. This is rot. This is danger. This is death." But hunger is stronger than fear. You reach out, pick up the wet fruit, and take your first hesitant bite. 20 minutes later, the world around you begins to change in a strange, inexplicable way. The sharp edges of reality soften. The constant, sticky fear of a saber-toothed tiger or a hostile tribe from beyond the hill, a fear that sits deep in the subconscious of every member of your clan, recedes for the very first time in your life. It is replaced by a soft warmth spreading through your limbs and a strange, frightening, yet alluring confidence. It is generally believed that alcohol is a product of civilization, a luxury invented out of abundance, excess, and boredom. But what if it was exactly the other way around? What if this very rotten, fermenting apple was what forced us to become human? Today we will walk this path anew, without laboratories, without store-bought sugar, without glass bottles, and without a single understanding of the laws of chemistry. Step by step we will create the first alcohol in history, being primitive humans. And we will understand why this recipe changed the course of human history forever. You think you control your habits, but this contract was signed long before you were born. If you listen to the end, you will realize that alcohol did not just accompany humanity, it engineered it. To survive and obtain this sacred, intoxicating nectar, you will have to strike a secret deal with a hidden world, a world whose existence you, as a primitive hunter, do not even suspect. Your main tool in this step-by-step guide is not fire, not sharp flint flakes, and not clay vessels. It is microscopic, invisible creatures that live on the skin of wild fruits, on the leaves of trees, and are drifting right now in an invisible cloud in the air around your head. Yeast. The most successful and ruthless bioengineers on the planet. For a primitive human, alcohol is not a way to unwind after a hard week of work. It is a matter of brutal biological dominance. Think about this. Millions of years of evolution taught animals to avoid ethanol because, for most species on the planet, it is a pure, destructive poison. Birds gorging on fermented berries fall from branches and become easy prey. But your ancestors, about 10 million years ago, when they hadn't even climbed down from the trees yet, underwent a single life-saving mutation in the ADH4 gene. This mutation allowed your body to break down ethyl alcohol 40 times faster than any other mammal on Earth. Why did nature need such a strange glitch? The answer is simple, so that you could eat what other creatures considered toxic rot. Alcohol became our evolutionary ticket to the future, a way to colonize a dietary niche that no one else on the planet claimed. But simply gathering rotten fruit from the ground is a dangerous lottery. Sometimes it brings warmth and calories, and sometimes an agonizing death from pathogenic bacteria. To master this power, you must become a creator. You must make this chaotic process predictable. Step 1 in our primitive guide is gathering pure energy. You head deep into the forest and collect wild berries, figs, or small wild grapes. You do not yet know the word glucose, you have no terms for carbohydrates, but your tongue unerringly identifies. That which is sweet gives life, holds it inside the body. You collect these fruits and place them into a natural hollow in a granite stone, into a wooden log hollowed out with flint, or into a raw leather pouch freshly stripped from a killed deer. Step 2 is violence against form. Now these fruits must be ruthlessly crushed. By feet, heavy river stones, hands, the method does not matter. You need to destroy the cell walls of the fruit to release the juice, mixing it with the wild yeast that was already sitting on the skin of those berries. You are creating what, thousands of years later, winemakers will call must. Now you might think, okay, we'll just leave this juice out in the sun, and it will ferment by itself because everything happens automatically in nature. So where is the magic in the guide? This is a logical but deeply flawed skepticism. If you simply leave the crushed juice open under the scorching sun, disaster will strike. Instead of an intoxicating nectar, you will get rancid vinegar or a slimy, foul-smelling sludge teeming with cadaveric poison and fly larvae. The air is inhabited, and yeast is far from the only thing that wants to eat your sugar. Billions of mold fungi and putrefactive bacteria are fighting for this resource. You are starting a war of worlds on the scale of a single stone bowl. How do you win this war without antiseptics and microscopes? Solely through primitive intuition. You notice that if you close the vessel tightly with flat stones, coat the edges with wet clay, or bury the leather pouch entirely in the cool earth, a miracle happens. Without access to oxygen, the yeast cells find themselves trapped. They begin to suffocate. And in this panic, in a desperate attempt to survive without air, they activate an emergency, backup mode of their metabolism. They begin to furiously, at the limit of their capabilities, devour sugar, releasing carbon dioxide and ethanol. Alcohol for yeast is not just a waste product, it is their chemical weapon, their scorched earth. Yeast releases alcohol purposefully to kill, to sterilize everything around it, destroying competing bacteria that cannot tolerate an alcohol environment. You use their total war of annihilation for your own selfish purposes. The yeast kills the bacteria, and you end up taking it all. Look at this process from the outside. Microscopic creatures are dying by the billions in a suffocating, closed pouch, choking on their own metabolites, just so that a primitive hunter can get his coveted sip of magic. But what if you live in the harsh north, where there are no sweet grapes, dates, or figs, where all around you is only hard, dry wild barley, wild wheat, or crystallized honey from the hollow of wild bees? Yeast does not know how to eat dry, hard starch. Grain for them is a locked, impenetrable fortress. And then, the primitive human takes a strange, intuitive step, one that feels almost disgusting to a modern person. He takes the barley grains, puts them in his mouth, and begins to chew them long and methodically. Then he spits the resulting whitish mush into a common pot, pouring warm water over it. Sounds wild. But your saliva contains the enzyme amylase. You are literally breaking down complex, inaccessible starch into simple, sweet sugars right inside your mouth, through the power of your own body. You become part of the production chain, working as a living biological chemical reactor. You give the yeast food they can digest. You unlock the fortress for them, and then a few days later, the bubbling in your secret vessel subsides. The hissing has stopped, and carbon dioxide no longer bloats the leather walls of the pouch. A thick gray sediment has settled to the bottom, a massive graveyard of yeast cells that have finished their work. You hold a bowl of cloudy, warm, strange-smelling liquid in your hands. In this very moment, you change forever. You're no longer just an animal passively gathering random gifts of nature and submitting to her whims. You have subjugated an invisible sacred world. You have created a substance capable of altering the state of your own consciousness at your very command. Think about how this looked and felt back then, at the dawn of humanity. Around you is a cruel, cold, absolutely incomprehensible world, where every day is an exhausting struggle for a piece of raw meat. Death walks closely behind you, lurking in every shadow. Your children die from mundane infections. Your brothers perish on the hunt under the hooves of beasts. You have no answers to why the thunder rumbles, why the grass dies, or why the sun goes below the horizon. You are defenseless against the face of an infinite universe, and suddenly, a single sip of this fermented liquid instantly strips away this age-old existential dread. It grants the illusion of control. It unites a fragmented tribe around the fire in a way no weapon ever could. Those who just yesterday fought fiercely over the best piece of prey now sit shoulder to shoulder, sharing food and beginning to sing strange, rhythmic songs they had never known before. Alcohol bursts the first collective ritual. Ritual inevitably births the first religion, shared myth-making, a belief in spirits and gods. This step-by-step recipe is not about the technology of primitive brewing or winemaking at all. It is about how one specific chemical substance forced roaming, free hunters, and gatherers to stop. Think about it. Why run after a herd of mammoths, wearing your feet to the bone if you can stay right here? Plant this unremarkable barley around your camp, build the first sturdy fence, dig deep storehouses, and defend this land, simply waiting for the next harvest to mature for a new batch of must. Archaeologists are increasingly finding shocking evidence of one wild theory. Humans did not take up backbreaking, grueling agriculture for the sake of nourishing bread. They took it up for the sake of a regular drink. We built the first permanent homes, the first stone temples, and the first prototypes of cities, only because we physically needed somewhere to store heavy, fragile bowls of fermenting beverage. Grain was too valuable a raw material for magic to be left for rodents to eat. Alcohol anchored us to the earth, tied us to territory, forced us to invent property and hierarchy. We are used to looking down on primitive humans with a slight sense of superiority, arrogantly, as savages in dirty skins who acted blindly, obeying only basic instincts. But it was precisely their astonishing ability to discern a hidden source of cosmic power within a rotting, spoiled fruit, their willingness to trust their intuition, to step over natural disgust and the fear of poisoning that created the very social reality in which you and I exist today. Every time you pass by the bright neon signs of night bars, see vast brewing plants gleaming with stainless steel, or simply grab a glass bottle from the shelf of a modern supermarket, remember where it all began. This is not a byproduct of civilization and progress. It is their primal cause, only the scale has changed, but not the essence. You look at that same cloudy bowl, once created in the pitch darkness of a cave. Thousands of years later, the chemical formulas of alcohols have become perfectly clear, yeast strains are cultivated in sterile laboratories, and temperature processes are calculated by computers down to 1/100th of a second. But the existential core remains absolutely unchanged. We are still sitting by our makeshift campfire in the middle of a vast, cold, terrifying, and largely incomprehensible cosmos. And still, from generation to generation, we try to drown this internal, primitive fear of the unknown with the help of tiny invisible creatures that once, at the dawn of time, agreed to work for us inside a dark, damp leather pouch.